Hello everybody, Roger Porcelli here, and today I'm going to make a series of short videos about how to build the Ghost Cat. Alright, the first thing we're going to go over is the weights or the traction magnets. I'm going to start with the standard weights here. So this is already installed. I will install the other side in a second. I just want to show you that this spacer here goes on the bottom and it links into the rails in the chassis, and then the brass goes on top of it. A lot of people have asked if the brass is supposed to be glued in on the bottom, and that's not the case. The thing to keep in mind is on the plastic piece, there's a top and a bottom. So the skinny side is the top, and that goes up against the brass, and the thick side here goes towards the rail. So the way we install this is we take the plastic piece with the skinny side up towards the top of the car. We slide it in on the rails as such and push it all the way back. It might help to keep it out a little bit to help start the brass piece, which we're going to do now. So you take the brass piece and you start it just like that. Slide the plastic piece all the way back, and then grab yourself a set of tweezers or something to just push on the brass and just firmly push it back in, and it'll go in just like that. And that's what it'll look like with both sides installed. I also make an optional rear weight set, the Featherlight rear weight set, which is shown here, and I will show you how to install that. It's a lot easier as it's a single piece, and it also has a lower center of gravity. So we'll just uninstall the standard weight set by pushing right here, and you can see it slides them out pretty easily. Set that aside, do the same thing on this side. And they are out. Oops, that one. There we go. Grab the Featherlight weight set. I'll just show you that the side with the brass showing goes towards the bottom. And again, there's channels that will slide over the rails in the side of the chassis here and here. And the brass goes towards the bottom. So it's basically just like installing a traction magnet. Set it over the rails, push it back, get the other side, set it over the rails, and push it all the way back. And there's the Featherlight weight system installed. Next, I want to talk to you about my level 10 and ceramic traction magnets. Alright, so you can see the step of the magnet on this surface of the magnet right here. This is designed to focus the magnetic field and give you more downforce focused at the rail. The other side is completely flat. That goes to the top of the car. The step goes towards the rail. One traction magnet is marked with a white dot. That goes on the passenger side. The other one goes on the driver's side. And we'll just install those really quick right now. White dot goes on the passenger side of the car. It just slides in. Other one goes on the driver's side and slides in. Before moving on to the next step, I just want to go over the 3 variations of the chassis, the stiffness levels. Prior to release, I had a photograph out on Facebook that showed something different because I was going to use different materials, so that changed. So this one here on the left is the Flex, and that can be used for Spec Racer, Spec Jet, and Super Stock. This is the medium. It can be used for Super Stock, Spec Racer, and CMPM. This is the stiff, can be used for CMPM, and if you want Spec Racer. It could also be used potentially in Neo, although I will come out with an even stiffer chassis once I come out with Neo traction magnets later on. With that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and install the guide pin and the front axle. So for the Ghost Cat, so far, and it's still early days, it seems like the guide pin in the extreme rear position seems to offer the best handling. So all the way back. So with front axles, what I like to do is give a little taper to each end just to make installation of the stoppers for the front axle to go a little bit easier. And I also like to rough up the end just a tip a little bit to give the Loctite something to hold on to keep those spacers from falling off. The forward position is the same wheelbase as the middle position for the Fusion or the short wheelbase for the Viper or the G. And you can see that there's a little bit of axle sticking out here. These rims are designed to put a 10 thou spacer on each side so that you can pull it out a little bit more if you want, or shorten the axle a little bit and then the rims can sit on the inside of the body. All right, so the front axle's installed. I'll clean that up later. Goes in the forward position or long wheelbase for my car, which is again the same as the short wheelbase for the Viper and the G, and the middle position for the Fusion, and the guide pin goes all the way back. Okay, next up is the front bulkhead, the hangers, and the hoods, which is quite honestly where the bulk of the work of building this car is. I'm just going to go over a few things real fast here. This is a completed, without the bushing or bearing, a completed bulkhead with the hangers and hoods installed. This has both the Pro Copper hanger and Pro Copper hood being used, which is my preference. The standard hood, which is right here, which is a lighter colored copper, has a shorter hanger area towards the rail right here, so it doesn't need to be sanded. The window will need to be opened up a little bit as it's a little bit smaller, so it's harder to get the shoes to fit with this one without opening that window up. Sorry, I was trying to focus on that. It's not doing it very well, but you can see the standard hanger versus the Pro hanger, which has a much larger opening. The Pro hanger, there's a little more meat on the bottom here, so that has to be sanded or ground down a little bit so that it doesn't make contact with the rail. Alright, so the way these get installed is you just grab a hanger and just angle it in like as such. Pull the Christmas tree post right here, which is where the springs go in. Pull it back a little bit and just, oops, I keep moving it out of the way. Squeeze to push the hanger down. That's how that goes in. And then you can grab a hood. I like to use just a needle nose pliers. Grab the hood just like that, so you can see the fourth side, which is the hangover, goes at the top of the car. The way to do this is to just angle it in to get it started and then push in. You'll hear it firmly pop in place. You don't want to push too hard because inside, you can see it a little bit right here, there's stoppers that will keep the hoods from going too far into the bulkhead. And if you push too hard, you'll push right through those and could possibly break it. Now we'll do the other side. Angle it in. Push the Christmas tree post away. Push down. Use your needle nose to hold the hood with the fourth side up. Angle it in to get it started a little bit. And you can hear it pop into place. So that's fully assembled. The next thing you want to look for is to make sure there's not too much of a gap. You don't want too much of a gap here. This one seems good on the driver's side, but I'll still take this tapered tweezer, which is just a ceramic tweezer, and I'll slide it in. And you can see it's going to push the hood into the hanger a little bit to lock it in place. Now it's only messing with the contour of the hood on the outside of the hood itself, and the brush is not going to be sitting there, so you're not really hurting anything as far as connectivity is going. But it does lock the hood and hanger in place and makes a better connection. On the passenger side, for whatever reason, it's always there's always seems to be a little bit more of a gap there, as you can see right here. So it's more important to do this on the passenger side. And once you've done it a few thousand times like I have, it gets to be second nature and can almost do it on the first shot. Just double check with the fingernail to make sure that the hanger isn't moving. It doesn't seem to be. And then that is completed. Alright, so the next thing with the bulkhead here is the spring posts. These orange ones, which I put in a lot of the kits, were 3D printed, and I'm having a machined one made. So it's got a very narrow neck and a larger OD flange in case you wanted to flip it over and push a spring down all the way. What I mean by that, I'll show you here. This is the way it normally would go on. Push it down like that. Sometimes if you're running like a narrow spring, you could put it on like that. I've done this in the past and used the flange to push the spring all the way to the bottom. Now, I did this on the passenger side. You would not want to do this on the passenger side. It's usually the driver's side where you want to do that, because the notch for the brush will be lower on that side of the car. So with these 3D printed ones, sometimes it's necessary to take like a fine tweezer and open up the hole just a smidge by rotating it around a fine point tweezer. And then you'll still have a firm fit, but it won't be too tight to where you'll break it trying to take it off. So these are good to go right now. The next part, and quite frankly, the part that's going to take the longest with any build, is the brushes. So my hoods are designed to have very tight tolerances so that the brush does not move around inside the hood at all, which would cause arcing and loss of power or inconsistent power at the very least. So the tolerances are tight, so the brush fits tight. So you need to polish it up, and this is just a smooth piece of plastic. I think it's styrene, and I'll just take a brush and polish all four sides. You can see it gets nice and shiny once you polish it. And this takes just enough material off so that it'll fit through the hood properly. Before we test fit the brush, we want to take this little sanding twig here, and all these tools will be listed in the comments down below, and just take the leading edge of the brush and rub it off just a little bit. So we're only taking off this part right here, just a tiny bit. And then I have another one of these sanding twigs that I've cut down to fit inside of the hoods, just to polish them up a little bit and clean them out from any manufacturing burrs or whatever. So I just take that, slide it back and forth, flip it over, go to the other side, and repeat the process. Then grab a tweezers, grab your brush, try not to drop it. Push it through. It's still a little tight on this bulkhead, but what I want to show you here is if you push it all the way through, let it drop, and then inspect the brush, you'll be able to see some score marks on the brush as to where it's still tight. And here on this brush, it's this edge right here. So we just need to polish that a little bit more. All right, we polished it some more. Try to test fit it again. And just rinse and repeat this process until it slides through relatively easily. You want it to be snug, but not tight. It's still a little bit tight. So I'm just going to do this a couple more times until the brush goes through there without hanging up. This is really all there is to it. This is the most difficult part, in my opinion, of building the car, is getting this right. Once this is done, it's smooth sailing. I mentioned earlier that the Pro Copper hangers hang down a little too far, so I'm going to show you how I go ahead and grind those down now. I'll just take a Dremel, put it on as low as the setting as it'll go, and just carefully grind. Just carefully grind the bottom of the hanger away, until it's pretty much even with the edge of the bulkhead, the back edge of the bulkhead here. Should be enough there. We'll do the other side. And there we go. Show you what I did. You can see that the hanger doesn't protrude past the bottom of the bulkhead. It's even with the step here. The final thing to do to the hanger is to push it back a little bit like this to limit how far back the shoe will travel. If you don't do that, sometimes it can get hung up in there. I like to make it so that the leading edge of the hanger is almost even with the leading edge of the bulkhead right here. So we'll do the other side now. And there you go. Bearings get installed as per normal. It is a tight fit. I wanted a tight fit because I didn't want the bushings or bearings to move around at all. All right, once you get the bearing installed, make sure that it's fully seated in the recessed pocket, which it appears to be. And then the bulkhead is finished and ready to go. If you haven't guessed, we're building a CMPM car here. The next thing we're going to talk about is motor spacing. I like to insulate the comm with a 20 thou plastic spacer, insulate it from the rest of the metal spacers we're going to use. Put a 50 thou spacer right behind it, and then a 50 thou spacer on the rear. It's already on there. Test fit the bulkhead. I like to make sure the edge of the comm is even with the front of the hood, the leading edge of the hood. It's just about there. Put the bearing on this and test fit it in the chassis. See how much spacing we have left to get. Push that all the way down. Move it back and forth. There's still a little bit of movement there. There's no rubbing on these tips right here, which is one thing you have to look out for. Make sure the stack isn't rubbing against these tips. I think I'm going to put another probably 5 thou or so in the rear there to close it up. Make sure there's no more movement. Yep, another 5 thou. Pop this out. Take the bearing off. Put the 5 thou spacer on. Put the bearing back on. And test fit it again without losing the bearing and spacers. Oop, magnet move there. It spins freely. So that looks like we're good to go. Just double checking nothing's rubbing. And I'm happy with that spacing. Usually what I'll do once I'm happy with the spacing is put a pinion on the rear so that I don't lose the bearing and spacers. Alright, I'm going ahead and taking the motor block out of the chassis after we've spaced it. We're going to go ahead and put the brushes in. We polished these down a little bit earlier. We're going to go ahead and install them now. We'll do the passenger side first. If we don't drop it. Goes in there, butts up against the comm nice and freely. Doesn't flop around. These are the new CMPM springs right here. They have a long leg, which is shown right here. That goes up against the brush, and the short leg, which goes up against the Christmas tree tower. We're going to take the spring here, long leg, will go up against the brush. No trimming or cutting of these is required, or bending, or CMPM, just put them right on. Then grab one of the spring caps, pop it on, push it all the way down. Grab the end of the wire. Oops, missed. Put it on. I usually start with both sides in the middle position of the tree. There's 3 positions you can see here, bottom, mid, and top, where that spring can sit so that you can move it and it'll stay there. Excuse me. Once you get one side or the other done, little test you can see to make sure the brush isn't hanging up is rock the motor back and forth like this and make sure the brush moves with it. As you can see, the brush is moving with the comm, so it's not hanging up. So that one's good to go. Go ahead and do the other side. Goes in there nice and easy. Doesn't flop around. Same thing. Long leg of the spring goes towards the brush. Always sticking the circle out, and then the springs wrap around it. Spring cap. Push it all the way down. Rock the motor. Brush is moving with it. Both brushes moving with it. Good to go. Got a set of HD motor magnets all set to go right here. White side goes on the passenger side. Rear bulkhead. Make sure the top of the motor magnets sit inside these channels. This is what's holding them from going up against the motor. All set to go. Grab the chassis. Make sure the traction magnets are pushed all the way back. I like to angle it in with the the rear bulkhead first. Make sure everything gets seated, and then I'll push down on the front at the same time, and then the rear at the same time. Make sure it's all nice and tight, and then squeeze right at both bulkheads on both sides. Everything's together. Make sure you still have a little bit of movement, which we do. And that's it. She's ready to rock. All right, the final thing to talk about is pickup shoes and pickup shoe springs. Have two different versions of shoes. This is the original shoe, the V1 shoe. And I didn't have that for sale because I wasn't happy with how it was manufactured, because you have to open it up at the bottom here to make it even with the flat of the shoe. They didn't do that during the manufacturing process, whereas on the V2 shoe, you can see that they did. The opening goes all the way down to the flat of the shoe. Now, the V1 shoe, which is right here, is a tiny bit thicker, so it doesn't bend quite as easily, longer and narrower, and it seems to be working a lot better for stock motor classes. CMPM, it doesn't seem to matter which shoe you use. The car works pretty well with both shoes. The V2 shoe, again, is an excellent shoe for the Fusion. No bending required at all. It goes right on the Fusion. It's perfectly flat and good to go. The main problem the V2 shoe has in some stock classes is it gets hung up back here and it doesn't move freely, and that was causing it to lose a little bit of power. And that's also the main reason why we pushed the hangers back like we did earlier. So that's two versions of the shoes. We're going to go ahead and pop a 9th spring in here, put one of the V1 shoes on. They're longer, so they go on a little bit easier. Missed the post. There we go. We'll put a V2 shoe on the other side so you can see how I open the shoe up. I'll just put it between my thumb and forefinger and push so that it opens it up like that. Put the hook around the hanger. It'll go right over the post, and then push the post back with my fingernail, or excuse me, the shoe back with my fingernail so it engages the post. That's how you can put either shoe on. Last thing you want to do is test to make sure they're moving freely. Just push on the front. You can see it goes back to the forward position when you let go. Same thing for this side. If that's getting hung up, you might need to push the hanger back a little bit more. Remember, that's what we did right here. Push this back to be even with the leading edge of the bulkhead so that the shoe doesn't get hung up when it goes back. And that's it. The car is done. I'm going to put it on the break-in block. This car, once it's broken in and tested on track, will be waffled off next week. And that's it. Any questions you have, put them in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks for watching. I hope it helps, and I'll talk to you soon.